Okay, so last session we learned about display options, how we can handle display in styles. So we have a CSS display. In display, the examples we learned, one is display none, we have a display block, display inline, display flex. In flex, we learned about flex wraps, how to handle them. And next, after understanding display flex, in display itself, we learned about how to justify the content horizontal and vertical. Justifying the content horizontally and vertical. Next, justify contents you can arrange between also. For example, suppose we will see one small design here. I will give you few screen designs today into classroom. Screen designs, screenshots, so that you have to design. Few examples I will upload. You have to design those and submit. So based on till now what we have learned, right? Now in the display, we have another option to understand how to use display grid. Actually, we used grid for displaying information in columns. Generally, CSS display, we have grid and we have CSS columns. We have two options. Then generally, people ask the question, what is difference between columns and grid? Because grid also arranges in columns and columns also arranges in columns. So grid and columns both arranges information into columns. Then what is difference is, grid advantage is it organizes information. Let's be clear here. Display grid. Display grid, it organizes information, organizes information into specific row and column. So it creates flexible and responsive layout. So this is also used for designing responsive layouts. We can create responsive layout. So by using this, responsive designs. So how grid works? So we have the options already. Syntax we already know, right? We have to use a container. This container we have to set display as grid. Then you have options. What are those? Grid template columns. Grid template columns. Grid template columns, you have to define, you can define in fractions or in size. That means you can display some pixels or you can display in fractions, right? How many fractions it will support? 12. 12 fractions it will support. And we also have extra grid row number and grid column, that is column number. column number. So all these days we were not using that grid row and column, we were using only grid. And in so many examples we learnt about this. In so many examples we use a display grid to arrange form elements side by side, to arrange ordered list, unordered list side by side into 2 columns, 3 columns. Everywhere we use this grid columns. But what is this grid row and grid column also? So earlier we were using majority of these two options, grid template and all. Grid row, grid column arranges information into specific row and column numbers. For example, let's see. So here we are creating a simple design, doc type HTML, head, title, some grid. And in the body section, we have a header. So in header, we have some heading, some Amazon, some shopping, that is heading. We have section. In this section, again, we have some content. So we have a nav. So here we will define an unordered list item, some electronics like this. So footwear and fashion, something. And we also have another container as main. So here heading like Amazon, some shop online. So online, some text we are defining here. So special offers on electronics, something. Now we have one more, that is suppose aside, we have aside. These are in the section, we have all these in the section. Some define some 50% off, something like this. Now we have another, after the section we have a footer. So footer, I will just put a paragraph here, copy and copyright 20. Okay. Now this is the basic design we are having. So that is the content we are organizing in a normal way. It is there now. It is blocked content. We are displaying the content in a block. Yeah, it is in a normal way. Now we want to organize the content here. So organizing the content, you see here, generally, when we have the header, section and footer, these are the three areas. Now we are keeping the style. And all these header, section and footer, all these we are keeping in. So I will remove from there. Yeah. And we will keep in a div. We will keep in a div with a class as container. In that we have all this content, whatever footer, header, sections, everything designed there. Now in the container class, we are accessing the class container. We are using display grid. That means it arranges information into grid. Now after configuring the grid, initially how many rows and columns you want. We need to define that. So I am configuring here grid template columns. Already we know we can give out of 12 fractions how many we want. Suppose here I am defining the number of fractions as suppose 3 fractions and some 6 fractions and 3 fractions. Then you can see it is arranged in this way because it splits the entire content, whatever you kept inside it. Actually, now we have the positions to configure. For example, here when we defined the columns fraction, this we want only for this section area. We don't want for all. Then generally what we do, instead of this container, we will just keep this for section. So in that case, it will arrange only the content in the section like this. That means header is there, footer is there, and the section content is there. Now rest of other options we know. We have because in section, why it is arranging in 3 columns? Because already section is having a nav, that is one group. Another it is having main, that is another group, and this is aside 3 groups. By mistake, if you are using another div or figure or something else inside it, then it will disturb. Make sure that if you are splitting into 3, that means the main container have 3 groups. If you want to divide into 3, it should have 3 groups, not more than 3 groups. Suppose in between, suppose we added a table, now it is disturbed. Why? Because so it arranges everything into 3 groups according to the content you have configured. So what we have to define here, according to how many groups you kept inside it. Based on that, you need to arrange the content. So this already we know, everywhere we were using and handling this. What is additional here is we can arrange information into specific row and column. That means we can say in which row it should be placed, in which column it should be placed. For that, we need to use these additional attributes, grid row and grid column. Up to this, we are doing every day, and that is what we done now. So rest of design, you know, suppose I am giving header. For header, we are giving some background color, so and the color as white, and the text align center, and we have padding as 10 pixels. This is the header area we are having. And we already have another option, section. Section, already we defined section. For this section, we will use height. Height has suppose 400 pixels. That gives the section height in this way. This is the height. And for footer also, we are defining the same option. So footer also the same as header, and it will display in this. Already arranging of rows and columns we done. So columns organized according to the content. This we done in the first day itself. When we learnt about various section, we already done that. That means we are not waiting until the CSS concept. This already we discussed in the first day of designing layout of our page, right? Now, how we can arrange content into rows and columns, that is important. So the important point here is display grid allows to organize information or allows to organize information into row by using grid row. into row by using grid row. It specifies the row number. It specifies the row number. Next, similarly, the attribute grid column arranges into specific column. Arranges into specific column. Yeah. So here we have to define the values for row and column are defined in points. So are defined in points. General points, how they define. We have a grid row. So we just define 2. So like grid row, say 1, like this, we configure. For column, what we do is grid column 1/4. That is like, so 1, 2, 4 columns. So grid column, so 1, 1. So this is only first column, like this. That is how it can arrange the content. So when you are organizing information, that is important. This type of layout is also very much required in some occasions, and it is responsive now. That means, see, generally I configured for section, I configured for header and all. Now instead of leave it header and footer, some height and width, these are okay. For section, I am not defining the grid. That means it will keep the content, everything in this way. And we also have header and footer. By default, they are kept in that positions. Usually, all these are kept in a container. All are kept in a container. Container is having header, section, and footer. So here we are defining class dot container, and this container is configured display as grid, and grid template columns, so 3 fractions, 6 fractions, and 3 fractions. This is going to arrange everything into like this in generally. Now, what is the place of header? What is the place of header? Header must be in first row. In first row, it must be in first row. From which column? First column. To how many columns? 3 columns, because it splits into 3. Then generally we write header. Here for header, we write grid columns. Grid column, we will define, it should start with 1. So that is 1 column. Okay, in which row? We have to define grid row. Grid row, top row. That means you have to define one. That means now the header content will be there. Other contents also we will adjust now. Others are not adjusted. Others also we will configure. Where should be the footer? Now, according to this design, the footer must be where we want to keep the footer, grid row. Grid row, it should be in third row. That means we have to define 3. Grid row is 3. And what about grid column? Grid column also 1. So grid column also 1. Now you can see it looks like this. But still we have to arrange the section also, right? Still section is pending because both are having same color. So don't get confused. They will separate now, right? Now the point here, what about the section? Section should be in which row? We have to define grid row. In which row you want? Second row. In which column we want? Grid column. This also 1. That means you can see here, it will be like this now. That means header in the first row, section in the second row, and the footer in the third row. Now header, how many columns it should spread? Header, how many columns it should spread? It should spread from 1 to 1 to, suppose I defined 4 columns. It should spread up to 4 columns. It will be like this. That means you are defining 3. It includes the current one also. That means if you want to give 3, you have to give 4. If you want to give 5, then you have to use 6. You have to define one additional, including the current content. Similarly, what about the footer from column 1 to column 4? That means it will be column 1 to column 4, it will arrange like this. So this is the right way of organizing a responsive design, not the previous way. Previous way we done, that's okay, appearance coming, but that is not the professional way because that is not responsive now. This is responsive. That is the reason if anyone asks like how we can create responsive designs, so many points are there. Out of that, grid is also one option. But if you arrange into rows and columns, that means now what about the second one? This one, section row. Column, how many columns we want? Section grid column from 1 to, this also 4. 1 to 4, this also will be 4, but inside that again we need to divide. That means here we have to use again display what? Grid. In this again grid template columns, how many columns? 3 fractions, 6 fractions and 3 fractions like this. Then you can see that will be arranged in this way. That is the right way of organizing the contents. That means inside, in which row, in which column you want to keep. This is now easy to organize your information wherever you may keep it. That means wherever you may design it, you can keep it in a correct place. That means you can shift your content to top row, you can shift it to bottom row, you can adjust the content locations easily. So previously we cannot adjust the content location. Now we can move them. Suppose grid row for footer I given as 2. That means grid row as 2. And the section as grid row as 3. Grid row as 3. Then you can see the content shifted. It is easy to move your content now. Where you want to keep, you can easily arrange. Earlier it is not possible. Earlier it splits into columns and fixes into columns. But now you have a facility of rearranging the contents easily. That means you can shift from right to left, left to right. How many columns you want, you can correctly adjust. For that, additionally, you have to use these options, grid rows and grid columns. Suppose I want to shift this again bottom. For example, see, suppose we have header. Header row is 3. I given header row is 3 and the section row is 2. Section row is 2 and footer row is 1. Footer row is 1. Then here you can see everything changes. Rearranging the content will be very easy once you have the information in rows and columns. This is difficult if you have divided only into columns. That's not possible at all, because earlier we were doing that. Earlier we were achieving the similar type of output, but not professionally complete. That's the reason I told you that in HTML, whatever CSS you are using to satisfy the situation, but not professionally everything correct. Now you can understand why to use grid columns correctly. Why to use grid columns, not to arrange in columns, because to arrange in columns, we have another option called columns. I will show you that also now. Then what is advantage of this? You can keep in specific row and columns. That means here important note is you can rearrange. You can rearrange your content. You can rearrange your content into row and column, into any row and column by changing the row and column numbers. By changing the row and column numbers. So that is important. So you can rearrange your content into any row and column by changing the row and column numbers. That is the purpose of using this. So here, how to keep the content. Remember, I am using header and footer directly. You can use a div. In the div, you can put a class and you say this is a header class. You can arrange everything in only divs. That's enough. You can keep them. But if you want more search engine friendly, then you need to classify headers, sections, aside, everything you need to define. So this is how we can define the grids, rows and columns. This example I will upload into classroom. I will upload what we designed here. I will upload. So here what we done, everything we kept in one main container. That main container is divided into columns. After that, every content where we want, we have to arrange using row and columns. To keep it in correct way, this header row will be 1, footer row will be number 3, and section row will be number 2. That will be correct. So it will keep everything in a right way. Right. This example I will upload into classroom. You can get it from there. So now that is how we can configure the columns. Now we have another important. So that is we can use directly CSS columns also. Instead of using display grid, you can directly use CSS columns. What is difference between CSS columns and grid columns? Difference is simple. CSS columns are used to display continuous content. Are used to display the continuous content. That means the content of one column will span to next column will span to next column automatically. The content of one column will span to next column automatically after specific height. After specific height. The content of one column will span to next column automatically after specific height. Specific height. So how this works, and this is different actually. Now the point is, in this, what happens, suppose current design, suppose in this shop online, this is the main section. In this, suppose we have lot of paragraphs. Then what will happen, that those paragraphs will stay in that column only. Those paragraphs will stay in that column only. They will not come to second column. That means if there is lot of paragraphs that is crossing the height, if it is crossing the height, then it will shift the footer down. Or if you put overflow, then what will happen? It will display a scroll bar. If you keep overflow you can keep hidden, or overflow you can keep auto. It will put a scroll bar, but it will not come to next column. That means the content you defined in this column, they will stay in this column only. That means, see, so here I will go to the navigation bar. I'm adding so many items in navigation. Now height, see what happens. Automatically they will be out of that, but they will stay in that column only. They will be out of the height you mentioned, but they stay in that column only. That means the content you defined in a column will stay in that column, will not come to next column. It will continue. Of course, if you want now this unordered list or navigation bar, what you can do is, for this nav bar, we can put overflow as auto. But for that you need to mention the height. How much height you given for this section? The same height you have to give for nav. That means height is how much? 400 pixels. Then you see the navigation bar contains scrollable. But it will stay in that column only. It will not come to the next column. Now, if you see newspapers, when you see the newspapers, they will continue to next column. Now, this is not good for such contents. Suppose you are trying to design newspaper which contains columns information. In newspaper columns, left column finished, the content will continue in the right. So this is display grid is not suitable for this kind of website. Suppose say online newspapers, right? So online newspaper, some Hindu, all these are there, such. So you see, majority we have to take the e-paper actually. The e-paper, because online newspaper means they will have a website like only, right? Now you see, this is the e-paper. This is the e-paper. And so we need to try this. We don't. Let's take any free one. Content, these are all these are images. We will take any free one, Times Group. Okay, you can see this. Now you see, this is the content now. Acha, everybody wants subscription. indiapress.org. This is fine. Okay. Okay, let's see now. Here in this, we have the contents English, fine. Okay. Any like this newspaper is under construction. Okay, what we will do, we will take a image. We will take a image and we will achieve that image now. Okay. This is all in a website format. We will take one image then. Online newspaper images. Okay. Yeah. Let's take this format here. Suppose any format we will take here. Suppose this is the format of content to display. That means we want to arrange the information into rows and columns. Yeah. So when you want to arrange information into such rows and columns, so such columns continuous, left, right, center, all these columns continuous. Then see how we can design the content. Means how we can create the content for that. Let's take a heading. Okay. News, HTML. And here I will give doc type HTML head and title. So news. In the body we have to design a div. Okay, at the top I give a header and here I say some Hindu. Okay, and here we are adding some content in a heading. And below this, we will keep everything in a section. And this time, in this section, we will paste some paragraphs. So we will add some paragraphs of information. And this paragraph information will be continuous. So lot of paragraphs of information is there. Now lot of paragraphs of information is defined. Now this will display everything in this way. It is going to display in this way. That is normal. Now I want continuous columns. That means the left column should continue to right, right to right again. Then this time, wherever you kept this in the section, so here we are writing a style and here we are defining header. So for header, I defined some font size. Already it is having a heading, just text align, we will put center. Okay, some border as 2 pixel solid black and box shadow some 2 pixel like this. Some gray. Okay, now we have some padding as 5 pixel, that is arranging the content in this way. Now below this, we want the information to organize into columns, which is the section. Here we are designing section. And for this, we have to use this time directly. If you want to configure columns, you have to use the syntax. You have to use the option as columns. So we have to define the option columns. So in columns, there are so many child options like You have an option like column count. Columns is a shorthand way. You have like column count. Column count, how many columns you want. Suppose number, some 4 columns we want. That means it will arrange entire information into 4 columns, and the information inside the columns will continue from left to right. It will continue from left to right. So you have options. See, I am giving here column count, column count, column count. We have column count. Column count I given as 4, column count 4. Then all that information will be arranged in this way. Automatic. We will give some gap here. So that means we will define the gap section margin top as some 30 pixels, and the paragraphs we will give the paragraph as text align justify. That will keep your content in this way. That keeps the content in this way. Now, very important, how many, see here we have continuous content paragraphs. Automatically what happens, it reaches certain height, because for section we haven't mentioned any height. By default it will take some height. If you mention the height, after reaching that height it will go to next column. That means that this content is continuing, this content is continuing here, and this continues to right, that continues to this. This will not happen if you are using grid template columns. If you use grid template columns, that means now very important. Actually, if I say grid template columns, in this every paragraph will be in a separate column. Or if I say 3 columns, then that means some paragraphs in be 1 column, some other paragraphs will be in 2nd column, some will be in 3rd column, uneven will be there. If you want to organize continuous content, then you have to define in this way. So we have options. One is column count. How many columns you want? Suppose I want 6 columns. Then you can see it will be in this way. We can arrange how many number of columns you want. Suppose now we want some gap between columns. You also have an option that is column gap. Column gap, how many pixels? Suppose 20 pixel gap between every column. Then every column some gap will be there. We can adjust the gap here. Suppose 40 pixels column gap will be like this. We can define the gap between the columns. So, and I want columns gap only 20. So then that looks okay. So this is arranging information into columns and keeping the content into columns. And we have option. One is column count, the number of columns. Another one we have column gap. How many pixels gap you want. Columns also have a rule. If you want, you can put a line between. If you want, you can configure a line between. That means for columns, you can also define an option as column rule. You can define rule. Column rule is nothing but border. So how you define? That means suppose I say 2 pixel dotted some black, just like border you have to define, and it will be having those rules. That means you can add line between the columns. So any style you want, you can configure, you can define in any style. In between, you can add any content. In between, you can add any content. You can configure any content. For example, you can have pictures and all. What is another option we are having? Column rule. Column rule. Column rule. So we are defining the column rule as 2 pixel like dotted and some black, same like how you define. And you also have column width. You also have column width. Column width, how many pixels you want, you can define. You have to adjust the column gap and the width correctly. Otherwise, it will display uneven. Right. This is arranging into rows and columns. Now, in between, you can have some content anywhere. Suppose I am writing here some after this column somewhere. Yeah, I'm keeping a heading here. Say sports news. Sports news. And that is some heading 2 defined there. Roughly, I will give here heading 2. So background color black and color as white and some padding as some 5 pixel like this. Now you can see, so in between somewhere that content will come. So you can add anywhere you want. You can configure that. That means where you are keeping this is important according to your requirement. Where you are defining it is important. This is how we can arrange the content. You can add images. Anything you can keep right in that. Information difference between the previous grid and this. In grid, if you mention anything in a column, it stays in that column. It will not span to next. Even the height is not enough. It will go outside. Or it will hide if you give overflow options. Or it will scroll. But it will not come out of that column. But this is not like that. Spanning into multiple according to content. That means if you have less content, then information will be, you see now, suppose I am removing all these paragraphs. Now you can see the information arranges accordingly. The information arranges accordingly. That means depending on how much information you have, it will span into the number of columns you are looking for. This is generally used for defining the columns. What is difference between grid and columns? That is the question. The frequently asked question. What is difference between grid and columns? Simple. Grid keeps content fixed to a specific row and column. So columns allow to span into next column. Allows to span into next column. That is the basic difference here. So grid, columns and options. Right. So this is about columns and grid, display grid, how we can use. So we need to know about these options, and this is the output for that. Next important, after understanding the CSS positions and options here, when you are keeping the content in the position. One more very important is you need to know about CSS Z index. Z index position. We know absolute positions and all, but Z index position is important. But for that, some more points you have to understand. Actually, you need to know about 3D effects and all, then you can understand the Z index. But I will just tell you a point. Later in 3D, we will apply in various examples. Because for Z index, you need to know 2D, 3D dimensions. Actually, Z index position is nothing but how you keep your content one behind another, one below another. So that is important. For example, see. So to use Z index, because we learned position absolute, position fixed, but for positions, Z index is very important. See, we have so doc type, HTML, head, title, and Z index. And in the body section, so we have one container. So the class is some red box. Okay. So another div class is some blue box. Okay. Some div again here we have the class as some yellow box. These options we are having all these divs. For keep the style here, style. And we have div. For all the divs, we will have a border 2 pixel solid. And black. All the divs have the same. Now we have red box. So for this width is some 500 pixels. And height is some 100 pixels. That is red box, and background color is red. Okay. Now we have blue box, and this is width as 100 pixel and height is equal to some 400 pixel. Okay, and we have the background color as blue. Okay, and one more we will keep yellow. So yellow box we have width is 400 pixel, height some 300 pixel, and background color is yellow. All these contents are kept here. These are the 3 boxes that we design. Now usually what happens is just we kept some different size options and all. So for example, now we see all these boxes display. That means for every box div. So I given as position as absolute. All the boxes are position absolute. Then they will come one after another. They will come one after another. Now I want to send this yellow box behind those 2. That is very important in arranging your content. That means then when you keep your content, sometimes you want some image go behind the text. So some image come above the text. So such designs are very important. For example, sometimes what you have to do is, suppose you are designing. So a box like this here. You are designing a box like this here. Now you are designing some another polygon here, some colored polygon here. Yes. And what you need here, you are keeping some text displayed there as suppose some offer, something like this. And usually we need to keep this content in this way. Suppose we need to keep this content arranged. We need to keep this arranged in this way. That means we want that to come and display here. or sometimes we want this content to come and display like this. That means how you can move this red box over that yellow, or how you can move this yellow over this red. These type of arrangements are very much important. Like this I want. That means we need to place the content behind it, before it. That is very important. So suppose you are having some other border here. Suppose here I am having some yellow, some another option, and I want this, I want to display like this. I want to display like this. I want to display that, I want to display this over it like this. I want to display over it like this. This you can adjust its place by using left, top, bottom, because you give an absolute position. That means, for example, see now here, when you say every div is absolute position, red box, I will say top as suppose 100 pixel. That means red box will come little down, and blue box I will give left, because all are absolute now, you can move them. So left is 200 pixel, then blue box comes like this, but yellow box is at the top. I need to send this yellow box behind, so we can move it any place we want. Then how you can send any content one behind another? That means we have to use the combinations now like this. We have to use a Z index. We have to use Z index. Z index, for example, this blue box, Z index is 1. Z index is 1. Actually, why it is called Z index? Because traditionally, we have x-axis, y-axis, and this is the Z index. That is the Z index. Z index will allow you to keep it behind others, bring it in front of others, that you can manage. But here you have to organize everything in level wise. That means, say blue box is Z index 1. You see now it comes on to top. It comes on to top. Blue box is Z index 1. Earlier, if I don't give this Z index for blue box, it is behind. It is behind. So I am bringing it again. So Z index 1, then it will be at the top. Now you need to organize others also. For example, yellow box I given as Z index as 2, Z index 2. Yellow box Z index 2. Because others are not organized. Other option, wait, what else is there? This red box is there. What is the red box? Z index. I am giving red box Z index as 3. Like this, I am organizing the content, and it will display in this way. It will organize the information in this way. That means we are keeping the content one behind another. Now I want this, see, this blue box is at 1, and yellow box is at 2, and this is at 3. Because all you have arranged now, then they will come from bottom to top. Earlier you are giving only for 1, then it appears on the top. But actually 1 means behind, 2 means over it, 3 means over it. That means from background to foreground, it will span. If you are not giving the Z index for all the contents, it appears like your content is at the top. 1 means at top. Actually 1 is not at top. What Z index will do? Z index, here we will see. Suppose the Z index for blue is 1. I will change, and yellow is 2 and red is 3. Let's change this now. Blue is Z index is 2. but at a 2 position already yellow is there. 2 position already yellow is there. Then what we have to do, this position I have to set it to 1. Set it to 1. Will go behind. Yellow will go behind. So that is Z index, how you are organizing the content. That means if you don't give Z index for all the elements, then it will look like the index you given 1 will be top. Obviously it will be top because others are not positioned with index. If others are positioned with index, then it will come from bottom to top. That means Z index, it arranges your content from bottom to top. Arranges your content from bottom to top. On Z axis, bottom to top on Z axis, it uses index position 1 is equal to bottom, 2 is equal to over 1, and 3 is equal to over 2, like this. It will go on that position. 1 equal to bottom, 2 is over 1, and 3 is over 2. Like that it will get. And after that you can change the locations, height, width, and all this we can adjust and configure. That means we can define the content in this way. That means you can add like this now. Suppose I want to change the position of blue box. That means left I will give as a 0 pixel or 10 pixel. That means it will be there. I want to change the position of red box. At the top I will give as 10 pixel. Then it will be there. Right? We can organize the content accordingly. So this kind of arrangement is very important. Even I just kept boxes, right? So we have to use images. I will show you how we can draw some shapes. For that we have to learn little bit JavaScript. Then we can use a concept called canvas and SVG. When we are using canvas and SVG, we can draw diagrams in HTML. When we draw diagrams in HTML, then the diagrams needs Z index position. We need mandatorily to keep the content organized in a correct way. So for that we have to use. Remember, in these containers, there is no content. Actually, we can have a content on that. In that box, we can put some content. That means suppose some header, suppose another heading like body. So another heading like, so some aside, something like this I given. Those content will be there. But all are at the top only now. All the content is at the top. You need to arrange that now. Suppose the red box, I shifted this red box to 100 pixels. Then it will display like this. I will change the blue box to 100 pixels. Then you will see the content as having that. So that means I am keeping all the color suppose as white, and it will display the content there. So where you are placing the content, that depends on the Z index position. So positions and Z index, these are important. So how you can arrange syntactically simple. So you have to take a div. So this is, I say simply div 1, okay, class dot. This div 1 is having so some width as 100 pixel and height as 10, height as suppose 400 pixel, and we can keep Z index. Z index is 1. Similarly, I have some div 2. And here we are having height 100 pixel, width some 500 pixel, and Z index is 2. Z index is 2, like this. Roughly, that example I will upload, right? This is basic. How we can keep the CSS Z index position. And this will be very helpful when you are creating 3D dimensions, when you are creating diagrams in HTML through Canvas, SVG like things. Arranging the content is important. Such things we can achieve by using this, right? Actually, we can have various images fitting into it. For example, already we know, no need to tell you that. Suppose we have a yellow box. So here I used, so background. So we can use a background. So we can use a background image also. Image. We will discuss that background image now. So that means we have some assets. So some shoe.shirt.jpg. So you can see it should get that in the background. Images, content, whatever you have, so you can place them inside those containers. You can arrange the images and all. But for that, now we need to understand one more option, that is about CSS backgrounds. CSS backgrounds. CSS background, so many things are there now. Actually, background is shorthand. This is the shorthand. That means it is used to apply everything. And already we know we have a background color. So we have background image. We have background position. We have background size. So we have background attachment. So we have background repeat. These are all background related important options. So the background color, the background image, background position, background size, background attachment, and background repeat. So if you want to keep anything in the background, so already we know background color. We saw background image also, but keeping that image in a correct position is important. So for example, see, here we are defining another image, background HTML. Yeah, so let's keep the doc type HTML head and title as background. And in the body section, here we are in the body section, just we have, and right here style, so body. And in the body section, we have some paragraphs. So let's copy some content here, some paragraphs of information. And we have some all that paragraphs of information is here. We are having some content. Just some content we pasted inside this, and we are having some information there. So now the point is, if I remove the pre, then everything will be 1. Because it is spanning right side, we will not do that. That is okay. Now, how we can keep the background? Already we learned, we know background color and all we learned. So, but background image, when you are defining background image URL, suppose I have assets in that, suppose Netflix back.jpg, and it will keep the background image. Now, when we know how we can make it less dominant, right? So already we learned. First, I will give color as white, that will be white. Now, when you are, that is text. Suppose I will show you, if I take a small image like assets slash shoe.jpg, and it will be displayed like this. You can see the background is repeating. I don't want to repeat, only one. Then we have to use an option, background repeat. Background repeat will have no repeat. So background repeat have so many options. So one is, first, background repeat. Background repeat is having options like repeat. It is having options like no repeat, and it is having like repeat X, and it is having like repeat Y. So repeat, no repeat, repeat X, repeat Y. These are the background repeat options. And generally, background size you have to define in pixels. That means you can define background size, some width into height. How much background size you want, width, height, you can configure. And we have background position. Background position, you can give horizontal and vertical positions. This is H position, means horizontal position. Means actually we have to write the position and vertical position. Those positions are written in pixels or values. Positions or values. What are the values you are having? Left, right, center, top, middle, center, top, center, bottom. All these are values. Position values you can define. And background repeat, background size, background position. We have like background attachment. Background attachment, we have fixed. The attachment as fixed. We have like scroll. Background attachment fixed, background attachment scroll. These are background attachments. These are generally used with the options. For example, see, actually this is one image only now. Only one image is there. So you have the content, suppose color I will give as red so that you can see. So it is like this. Only one image is there. I will adjust here because I given no repeat. If I say repeat, so if I say background repeat, that background will repeat. background will repeat depending on height and width. How to define the height? Background size. Background size, suppose 100 pixels and 100 pixels, that is width and height. Then it will be like this. Small images. So the background size, suppose I said some 200 and 200, it will be like this. I want as repeat only X. That means it will repeat X axis only. Means there. I want to repeat Y. That means it will be repeating along Y axis in the column. I want all directions. Then I have to use repeat. And if I don't want, then I have to use no repeat. No repeat. Now, if I am not repeating, suppose it is 400, 400. I want to keep it in center. Then we have to just define background position. Background position. You can give any pixels. You can give any pixels. Means left, right, there it will come. Or instead of giving pixels, you can give directly center, center. That means top left, top center, top right. So center left, center, center, center right. Bottom left, 9 will be there. 9 positions will be there. We can define center, center. Then it will be in the center of the page like this. It will be on the center of the page. And see, one more option is when I am scrolling, it is scrolling. Now what I can do is background, I can give attachment as fixed. Background attachment fixed. It will be fixed at center. Now only text will be scrolling. Only text will be scrolling. That means image is locked from the scrolling. That means image is not scrolling, text will be scrolling. So position your wish. You can configure at any size, any position you can define. That is important. Actually, we can display multiple images in background. Multiple images also in the background. That means currently we are just using background image. But many times ask like border, one image should come. In between another image should come. In the frequently asked questions here is can we display multiple images in background? Answer is yes. We can display multiple images in background, but for that we have to configure the values and attributes correctly. We have to configure the values and attributes correctly, then the position will be correctly displayed. So we have to correctly configure the values, otherwise you cannot see that. You cannot see. That means to keep the background multiple images, actually, suppose already I told you border images, background images, they should suit the situation correctly. Otherwise, you take a different image which is not good for background or good for border, you try to apply, it will not work. Right? Here, multiple, nothing but, see, you have to write like this. This is one image and I am using a comma, I am adding another URL. I said assets, some we have like star, so or we have like bullet, some bullet PNG. Now we are having 2 images, but still it will not display. Why? Because so you defined this, the second image is not there. Second image is not there. Let's remove this text for your visual convenience sake. Second image is not there. But we have defined that second image. Second image is not there. Reasonable. Why? Because this no repeat belongs to whom? Is it first or is it second? That is important. That means you given 2 images, then no repeat is to whom? That means suppose I have to define here comma, another one, this is repeat. That means first image is not repeating, second image is repeating. So you see now it works now. Size, positions, everything important. Size, position, everything important. That means I kept the shoe center, right? Then accordingly you have to adjust others. That means every height and width is important. This is 400 pixels, and I said suppose 100 pixels. So this is pixel, 100 pixel and 100 pixel, like this I am defining. That means one size is for this one, another for another one. That means if you are displaying multiple images, then you have to define multiple URLs, not only 2, you can put 3, 4, any number of images, but you have to arrange their content correctly. That means remember, if you say both repeat or both no repeat, then again problem will come. So these consequences you have to face if you are not correctly defining them. And alignments, positions, attachments, everything is important. You need to configure for both of them. So it is possible to display multiple images. But for that, you need to handle this situation. This I will give you into class, right? So this is how we define. We can have multiple URLs, you can have multiple repeat, you can have multiple size, we can configure them, right? So another point is, background images or images can change according to situation. That you will learn in responsive design. That means suppose I am adjusting the width and watching on mobile. On mobile, different background image will come, but on desktop, different background image will come. Like that, we can change images according to the situation. That for that, we need to learn some more responsive options, then we can handle. So this is backgrounds, how we can configure the backgrounds. Now by using all this, you must able to design some screens. I will give you some exercises now, some exercises. And tomorrow we don't have session. Again, our session will be on Monday, right? Tomorrow, no session. Saturday, Sunday, no session. I am giving you 4 tasks, right? Those 4 tasks you have to design. That means first I will give you some portfolio designs. That means website samples. Those screens you have to achieve. If you can achieve those screens, then 100% enough. Now some few more effects are there in CSS we will learn. Then we can go into the concept of bootstrap. We have to learn few more things. We need to know text effects, we need to know 2D, we need to know 3D, and we need to know responsive. These 4 options are there. Once we finish, now we can go into concept of bootstrap. By using bootstrap, we can design several real world scenarios, right? Now with that, we can finish CSS with responsive. Then we will go into bootstrap concept. That we will see in our next session. Monday we will continue with that. Okay, those exercises I will upload into classroom. You have to get it from there. Okay, right.